The lost art of communication and conversation, talking to people, especially talking to people that may have different views and opinions to us. Instead of talking, why not just put an emoji on somebody's Facebook post that they probably copied from somebody else's Facebook post? This is the way that we do communication now, it seems. And somebody who should know is Communications Manager of Maxim Institute, Jason Heale. Jason, kia ora, happy face emoji. How are you?
Good, mate. Happy face emoji right back.
This does seem to be a little bit of a lost art. And, well, there are people that we talk to, of course, but it seems to have got a bit tribal. You know, we talk to people who have the same opinion as us, but we avoid conversation with people who have, I don't know, a different view on faith or politics, for example. A great current example of that one, and, well, very much demonstrated by some recent hikois to Parliament.
That's right. Yeah, often I think it's it's funny how we even within our faith or our echo chambers, as you know, they're often termed, there's like sub echo chambers as well. So you can really split the hairs on that and be disagreeable on all sorts of things. But yeah, the example you're talking about actually happened last Thursday, and I think was lost a bit in the midst of all of the news about the Brain Tamaki protest that was down in Wellington.
Just on that one, actually, that surprised me a little bit. Of course, long memories of the occupation of Parliament grounds and some of the ugliness on both sides that happened then. Brain Tamaki comes to Wellington, everyone goes into a panic, locks down the whole block. Surely this sort of thing, I mean, back in the good old days, you know, this sort of thing would happen several times a week, or, as was the case on Thursday, several times a day. It seems to be out of proportion. Well, the response seems to be disproportionate, perhaps.
Yeah, I think everyone's minds were drifting back to that time in February 2022 last year, where there was that, you know, I think it was 24 days of occupation. And like you say, terrible things happening, and the way that it ended, and the escalation and things like that. And I think it was an overreaction, given that Brain Tamaki had said many, many times, "This is peaceful. We're going to walk." And I don't think any of his protests have ever kind of had that result. He's protested so many times. He's kind of a dab hand at walking, you know, in protest. So I think it was I mean, one of our colleagues was down there and said they heard about 3 minutes of protest people walking past as they passed, and later in the day they'd all dispersed, and then the next day you couldn't even tell that anyone was there. All the streets were back open by 6 p.m. that night. So it was a very peaceful protest by all accounts.
I mean, this is what hits the headlines, but there was other hikoi that happened that day, other things that are worth talking about, but don't get the oxygen, as it were.
Yeah, and I think the one that missed out maybe on maybe a bit of an object lesson for us was a hikoi of a very small hikoi, about 12 people who'd come down to present a petition to Parliament to protest the national and act policies on gangs. And they were, it was led by a lady who is the mother of three headhunter gang members. And she was met at the steps of Parliament as she delivered her petition by Mark Mitchell, the police spokesperson for National, who had been very vocal of her, criticising her and the hikoi as they'd made their way down to Wellington. And so I thought that was, you know, they couldn't be more opposite. If you know, Mark Mitchell is a ex-policeman himself, so very much on the opposite side of the line to these people. And they met, and they had a shall we say, disagreeable conversation, but it was a conversation, and I think it's a good object lesson for us in talking to people we disagree with.
This is something that we've seen on the hustings quite a lot, actually. You know, let's gather a group in front of the cameras of people who are my supporters. If there's any hecklers or anybody that disagrees with me, can we get somebody to take those people off camera? Let's not do disagreement. Let's just surround ourselves with fans and sycophants. Actually, that's not necessarily communication. is it? Being able to talk with somebody and not to have you're shouting each other down, and you both end the conversation with the same opinions that you started with, but recognizing it's worth having the conversation anyway.
That's right, exactly, and that's why we have a weekly podcast, and a couple of weeks the highlights of the week for us are the hecklers at these different events that they had, the stand-ups, because that's part of you go and you disagree with someone, and some of the times the ways that it was handled was actually really constructive. Like when Christopher Luxon had a heckler who poked his head over the fence, and he said, "Look, I'll come and talk to you afterwards, but we're doing a media conference right now." And so eventually they moved the conference inside, but he afterwards went and looked for the gentleman, couldn't find him, but made the effort, and I think that's good. And I think, like you say, there's a sense of we need to keep all our supporters around us. We need to keep ourselves safe in a way, to make sure that we're not challenged or criticized or have anyone come in who may, like you say, may disagree with us. But I think we miss out on something fundamental to our democratic process when people are not able to engage with ideas that they disagree with and have a conversation. It may be a disagreeable conversation. It may be one where you, like with Mark Mitchell, they didn't change their opinions. They didn't come to an agreement. He even refused to accept their petition. It was accepted by a parliamentary staffer.
Okay.
But afterwards, the response from the leader of the Hikoi was, "Good on him. I'm glad he came. I felt like I was heard," and that's often more important than winning. I think we think that being right or winning a debate or winning an argument is the most important thing, but I think we miss the fact that actually people just feeling heard and like they've had their say is often far more impacting. I mean, than any points.
That is the big contrast, of course, between what happened there and what did happen in February last year. And good on Mark Mitchell for doing it. Okay, he didn't back down. He's not going to say, I've met this person and I want them to like me and vote for me, therefore I'm just going to drop my policies and long-held opinions. No, he stuck to his guns in that regard. But he also had the opportunity to meet somebody face-to-face who would be directly affected by the policies and views and opinions that he had, very much in contrast with what happened in February last year. You had, literally an angry mob, but a mob whose lives had been deeply affected by the policies of the government, and yet not a single government minister or any politician currently in the House had the opportunity to go, okay, well, let's at least meet and talk with and listen to people whose lives are affected by the decisions that we make in the House. And I mean, it's an interesting situation at the moment, of course, because in the next 2 weeks, we probably have the attention of any politician that we're prepared to listen to more than in the next 3 years. Honestly, but that level of communication, that level of, I suppose, participatory democracy, where we can talk to politicians, even though those that we disagree with, have them listen to us, not because we're necessarily going to vote for them, but because we're people in a democracy, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of the strengths of the electoral part of our MMP system, is that I heard one MP or ex-MP say that as an electoral MP, his job was representing and advocating for a whole bunch of people who didn't vote for him and who disagreed with his policies. And he has to go and walk that line. And I think that's a real strength of getting to know your local MP, making sure that you have a good MP that you trust, or that you, even if you disagree with them, that you can go and have a conversation. That if you email them, they'll respond. They will ask you, if you walk into their office, they'll schedule a time to meet, and they'll have those conversations and be able to explain themselves to you. So I think
Strengths and weaknesses, I suppose. Then, of course, you got the list MPs who are just there because they're prepared to toe the party line and vote according to what the whips say that they should. But hey, I think that's a conversation for another time.
That's another conversation. That's right. Yeah.
Jason, hey, appreciate what you and the team at Maxim are doing. And I mean, you mentioned beforehand, there's podcasts, there's resources, there's a whole bunch of stuff online for the undecided voter. It's a great place to dive into, actually, to listen to the views and opinions of some people that you may not necessarily agree with, including the team at Maxim, but listen to what they have to say and prayerfully consider some of that information as we go to the polls in the next couple of weeks. Thanks for what you do. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.